Well, I'm delighted to be able to talk with you, Myles Matsuno, for this Nichibei Day of Giving. Thanks so much for taking some time.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
I remember the first time that we met, and it was at the Nichibei's Films of Remembrance, and you were doing a screening of your film about your grandmother. And I was wondering if we could just start off talking about that project for people who didn't see it, and what it was that first inspired you to work on that particular project with her story.
Right. So the film's called First to Go, heavily based on my own family legacy and what they went through with World War II, Japanese internment camps, etc. It was really just, it started off with seeing a poster that my dad had in his wall at his house. And it was a one sheet, or not a one sheet, but it was from the San Francisco Examiner that said first SF prisoner. And I dove more into that, and you find out more about your family legacy and all that stuff. So I really wanted to document something that I could have to pass down for like generations to come. So that's really how it started, like as this home glorified movie project that I just wanted to pass down so that my son and whoever daughter could have something and know where they came from, because I think that's very important. That's how that project initially started, and then going to film festivals, and then with the Films of Remembrance, being able to showcase it there meant the world to me, and having my grandma be there in a little town in San Francisco where everything went down. So it was just very memorable, and it's probably to this day one of the not just the most important for me, but the most impactful film I think I've made to help educate others too with the whole topic. So it's been amazing for me.
How much did you know before that, discovery of that clipping, and help people understand, sort of what you uncovered as you were doing this research on this project?
Yeah, so for me, I wasn't taught much on incarceration in Japanese. So I learned a lot, and I wanted to make sure that I dove into the history proper to make sure that what I was showing was factual. And not just, just from one museum or from one source, like really getting my hands dirty and like learning about, not just one camp, but most of the camps and all that stuff. So I personally wasn't, growing up, it wasn't something I was talked about much. And if I did, I kind of got roundabout questions, or I mean answers. And so as I got older, and maybe as my grandmother got older, and some of my other family relatives who experienced life at the camps got older, they were more open to speaking about it, and then uncovering chests that my grandmother had at her house, or maybe my aunt had something that she's like, oh, once they figured out what I was doing, documenting all this stuff, I feel like they were more open to actually teaching me, because here, the grandson is wanting to learn more about that part of their history and their life, which is also part of my life, right? I wasn't taught much. I feel like I had to do a lot of self teaching, and I'm still learning things all the time. That I was like, oh, I didn't know. Whatever the case may be, there's a bunch of different things that I still learn that happen in the camps.
And you had a great grandparent who was actually picked up right after Pearl Harbor. A lot of times people, think about the executive order 9066 and, that whole process, but talk about that part of your family's history that you learned.
Yeah, so from what I was told, a couple hours after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, the FBI came, and actually, when filing for documents within the government, it took like an 8 month process to actually approve and then go through and make sure that I was actually the grandson to get all these documents that the WRA had collected. Um, like they had already had like a paragraph on who he was, what he did in Japan, having served as a pilot in Japan and stuff like that. So they had all this stuff that had already been watching him, and I think that's also one of the reasons. Well, it has to be one of the reasons why they kind of targeted him initially, along with a bunch of different people in San Francisco. So from what I was told, it was a couple hours right after, and my grandma and her sisters and brothers and her mom didn't see him for like 3 years or so after.
Did that change the way you saw your own family? Like, how did that feel to be reading about your, your great grandfather who had been through, your relatives who had been through this, um, traumatic part of history, but oftentimes which isn't presented as American history?
Right. I think the thing that changed for me the most, honestly, was I've always had respect for those who came before us, and especially those who paved the way so that we can be here. And I think that I've always had respect for my grandparents. And I think for me, it just elevated that respect that much more, to know that this is a piece of history. Because also, as a teenager, maybe you're kind of in your own world. You're not really as engaged in history as, and it's sad to say that, but I mean, maybe that's my own perspective. But as I got older, you build a family, you realize what it takes to make it, right? And especially as immigrants, like my great grandfather and his wife, I think that it put a lot into perspective, made me respect a lot more, and just admire, what they had gone through, what they still went through even afterwards, and all that stuff.
They must be so proud too to have, somebody in the family who is taking such care, with the stories that you have, really honoring, respecting, and trying to be true to what the truth is, to their truth. Has, how has this impacted you just as a person in your own career, working in media, working in doing these films? Has it changed the way that you go about work, the way that you take perspectives, look at narratives?
Yeah, my great grandfather had a motto that says honesty and kindness is best in business. And I think that's something that I try to live out, and I think that's something that's important, being honest and being kind. You can be the best designer, the best director, the best whatever, but if you're not like an inspiring person, or you're not somebody that's kind and honest, I feel like those are character traits that you really need to be a leader. And I think that, and also, of course, having vision too, but I think that, when I read that in my grandma's legacy letter that she had written, that really touched me, because, I just think that that's really important. I've always tried to live that way too. So I think that, yeah, and I'm also just very grateful that I was given the chance and the opportunity to be able to capture this story and to be able to do it, because I preach this all the time, in the sense that, we have a phone that shoots 4K, and we have the ability to capture things that we didn't. I mean, we were able to use like a high camcorder, whatever, beta cam, whatever, but you had to be intentional about that, right? You had to charge the batteries, you do this, you need to plan to film for these things. Where now we have a cell phone where we can do that, and there's no excuse why you shouldn't be able to capture your own family legacy. And I think that a lot of times we forget that, our time on earth is precious, and especially with our grandparents. So I'm just grateful that I was able to do something like that, and my family's grateful for that too. So it's very neat.
One thing I wanted to ask you about is, I think with any city, sometimes we think about a place, a location, and it's an accumulation of our own experiences in that location, or our own emotional ties to certain areas. So I'm wondering what a walk through Japantown through Myles Matsuno's eyes would be like. Are there certain places that where you stop and, can you tell us the places that have meaning to you as you walk through?
Yeah, so growing up, I would always, when we come up from LA, I always wanted to stop in Japantown first, and see if my grandpa was at May's coffee shop, and just go to Aki Travel and try to go see my grandma, and then run upstairs and go see my grandpa hanging out with his friends, and how proud he was to see his grandson running through, the mall there. And so those are those are memories that I always cherish. And I think that for me, my memories are more with him and my grandmother hanging out in Aki Travel, and then when Aki Travel moved to a smaller location, and just stuff like that. So I think that for me, that's kind of my memory of a day, what it would have been like to with me in Japantown.
And can you give a quick little trailer teaser on what the Christmas in July project is, where it's being shown, how people might be able to see it?
Yeah, so Christmas in July, it's about a grandson who throws Christmas early for his grandmother who has Alzheimer's, who's not going to make it to Christmas. That's her favorite time of year. So it's about a small town coming together to do a common good, and he finds his passion for music along the way, a love interest, etc. And it had a theatrical run in Tennessee, in California, in select theaters, and it did well. And then now it's on Apple TV, Fandango now, Google, Amazon, all those places you can rent or buy the film and watch it there.
And that's certainly a place where hooray for technology that makes it so accessible, where people can watch it. That's wonderful. And congratulations, because I know it's no small feat to try and get a project from conception into production and actually see it as a finished product on the screen. Finally, I wanted to just ask you, what has the Nichibei Foundation, the Nichibei Weekly, what has that meant to you in terms of your kind of intersection with the Nichibei Foundation, and what is it that you find has been of value or been helpful or been an asset as you've kind of come through your own trajectory and crossed paths with the Nichibei Foundation?
Yeah, ever since I made the documentary, and I think two words that come to mind is community and support. Not living in San Francisco, having been raised in LA, but like a lot of ties to San Francisco and the community up there, it's been amazing to see how inviting it has been, and just the support that I've been given and the support I try to help out too, on my end. And I think that's something that's very valuable and I cherish very much. And I think that that means the world to me. Is you make a film like First to Go, and it's dear to your heart, and then it's accepted, and then they showcase it so that your entire family can come and watch it. That's something that I'll never forget, and I think that's something that my family will never forget. And it's one of the most amazing moments that I've ever had as a filmmaker. Probably the top, honestly. So I think for me, Nichibei means the world to me, and in that sense of just the community support that everyone there has shown me and my family and I.
Well, on this day of giving, thank you for all that you're giving to the community, because it is wonderful to see, stories that are passed on through generations, and then with the talents that you bring to it, being able to elevate and spread and really give so much heart and face to some of the struggles and some of the triumphs that our Japanese American community has faced.
Yeah, thank you.